countries, horse meat is considered a delicacy, so they definitely know they're eating it. There's a demand for horse meat. There's even in other countries, there's even like a raw horse meat ice cream. Like we would put nuts in our vanilla ice cream or something. They actually have ice cream with raw chunks of horse meat in it. Sushi. There's actually horses from Canada that are flown in airplanes over to another country to be slaughtered in that country for sushi.
Welcome to How We Change the World. I'm your host, Deborah Rowan, and today I'm excited to introduce you to a very unique and inspiring guest. Tawnee Preisner is the president and CEO of Horse Plus Humane Society, an organization she co-founded at the tender age of 19. Over the past 21 years, Tawnee and her husband Jason have grown Horse Plus into the largest horse welfare organization in the entire world, rescuing over 12,000 horses so far. Now, Tawnee's story began with a profound lifelong love for all animals. Her journey took her from California to Tennessee, where their state-of-the-art facility serves as a transformative force for horses. Today, we'll explore the incredible work they do, the challenges they face, and the innovative steps Tawnee is taking to change the world for these majestic animals. Hello, Tawnee, and welcome to How We Change the World.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to meet you because I've been hearing about you and your organization and everything that you've built over the last 20 years. And so to meet you in person and to get to hear it from the horse's mouth, to get too corny, is definitely a thrill for me. So I'll just start by saying that 21 years ago, you and your husband, Jason, founded this organization, Horse Plus Humane Society. I don't think that wasn't the name at the beginning, but that's the name for the last several years. You were only 19 years old. It's phenomenal that you could be thinking that way at 19. You still look like you're 19, and it's been 20 years, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm in my 40s now, but
have you? Well, yeah, you look young.
Yeah, so I think just a lot of the upbringing that I had is what helped create this organization. I look at 19-year-olds today and I'm like, no wonder nobody took me seriously back then.
Yeah, it looks like a child. Yeah.
And you know, it was just, I've always grown up loving animals, and I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I'm very dyslexic, and also got kicked in the head by a horse, and that kind of hurt my ability to learn reading and math.
Really? When you were young? Were you pretty young? Oh my goodness.
Like 9, 10. Oof. And so I knew that wasn't an option anymore. And after I got married, I went and got a horse from the auction. And I was like, you know, there's so many horses like her. I fully intended on keeping her when I got her. But I was like, if I could rehome her, I could go back and get more. And that's kind of just how it all started.
Yeah, very organically. Well, let's talk first about what your organization is and does, so people can catch up. You have rescued, sheltered, and protected over 12,000 horses and other animals, which we'll get into, but mostly horses, right? Since 2003, and you know, I want to kind of start. Most people who live in cities like I do, I happen to be lucky enough to grow up riding horses because we had a local place where we could go every weekend with my friends. And so, you know, through junior high and high school, we got to learn horses, and growing in Colorado, you're kind of exposed to it. But most people are not. They don't think in terms of horse rescue. We're all aware of dog rescue, cat rescue, and people have slowly over time learn to, some people, you know, choose not to get a horse or a pet from a breeder, but to go to maybe a local rescue operation and get it there. But horses is very sort of removed from most of us. So I really want, before we get into the whole story and what you do, I kind of want people to understand what that is and why it's even a necessary thing. Like, why would you need to rescue a horse? So can you talk about that a little bit?
So I think we could probably, most people encounter horses or like they go to races and they see horses and it's all glam and glory and everything. So I think maybe I'll just start with that industry. Now, in every industry, basically, when there is money in animals, there's going to be abuse, there's going to be suffering, and there's going to be a need for rescue.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to watch a horse race, you're going to see these beautiful athletes at their top performance.
Yeah.
And if you're seeing those horses race, there's always a winner and there's always losers. And the ones that are losing most of the time will end up in the slaughter pipeline.
Because the slaughter pipeline, meaning what?
They are on their route to slaughter. So basically the pipeline for horses is, as long as they're performing at their top performance and they're earning money, or they're able to do the tasks that their owner wants them to do, they're basically safe for the most part. But as soon as they're not winning or they're not able to perform like their owner wants them to, they will not be wanted or needed by that individual or, that, huge group of people that have, maybe that racehorse. Right. So they want their horse to go away and they want to get the next winner. So they will sell that horse or give it away. Maybe that horse gets injured, like it can't race to that level of performance. And instead of working with a veterinarian and being like, what does this horse need long term? And the veterinarian's like, well, it's never going to be sound again. That's a death sentence for that horse. And it's not a humane death. It's every horse in the United States has a slaughter price on its head. Meaning that horse traders and kill buyers are kind of out there scooping up these horses that these owners that aren't being responsible horse owners are like, oh, my horse is no longer useful. Oh, you could give it a good home. Okay. A lot of race horses are, and it might be something that the actual owner of the horse doesn't even realize. Oh, the trainer has someone that can give the horse a good home. Yeah. And that person is someone who takes the horse to an auction where that horse is sold off for its meat price. And from that auction, it might go from one trader who might drive it to another auction that's maybe closer en route to headed to Mexico and sell that horse at another auction. Or it might be purchased by someone that has a semi-truck and ships horses on a weekly basis to Mexico. And so the pipeline is kind of where horses go to disappear when owners they're not going to be responsible. Like we would never, like there's nothing in the United States where somebody's like, oh, I have this dog. It's not doing what I want it to do. So I'm going to go take it to this place and they're going to export it into Mexico for slaughter and nobody will know what happened to it.
I have so many questions before you even keep going. So if I have them, I suspect other people will as well. Because this almost sounds dystopian. Like it sounds like the old wild, wild west. It doesn't sound like the United States in 2024. But you're telling me that if a horse race owner, is that what you call it? A racehorse owner, doesn't want their horse, why would they not just sell it to, a friend or somebody whose kid wants a horse? Like, why would they sell it to an auction house? And then you use two terms, which are kill buyer. That's actually their title. Is that what you call them, or is that what they go by?
I mean, they themselves might not go by that, but that's everyone that's in the horse world knows that that's why they're buying them is to kill them. A
kill buyer. I can't believe that's still a thing. And then there was another term you used. I can't remember what it was.
Traders.
Horse trader. Yeah, that just, I don't know. It doesn't sound like modern times, but you're telling me this happened. All right, so this is, and why can't they just sell it to someone? There must be a lot of people who would want a healthy horse that is racing, and yeah, maybe it can't race anymore, but it's still a good horse, and they live a long time, don't they? Typically?
Yeah, no, horses can live well into their 20s, sometimes 30s if someone
really
them. So race horses in particular are horses that are very trained athletes for a very specific purpose.
Right.
So if you have a racehorse that is basically only trained under saddle to run, that's not going to be a good kid's horse. Now, these horses can be taken and retrained and learn how to be excellent horses in other fields of their, I mean, they can do barrel racing even, they can do jumping, they can do a lot of different things. But if you think about the amount of horse racing that's happening across the United States and how many horses actually win the Triple Crown, there's a lot of horses in between there that are going to slaughter because basically horses are bred for racing, and then they're auctioned off to potential candidates that would like, okay, I want this horse I feel like this horse could win. So they'll buy it at a very high end auction. These are not kill auctions at all.
Right.
Like they're spending tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions of dollars on these horses.
Right.
And they'll have a trainer working with them. As soon as, there's a race for them to go to, they'll test them out. And if that horse is performing well, it's going to keep going. And I think the best example I probably have is this horse. His name was Stardust. And he was originally purchased for $30,000 by actually the president of MGM. And he raced, I think it was 3 races. He didn't win his last race. And in a matter of like 3 months, I got him at an auction for $300.
Whoa. That's very dramatic.
Yes.
And so then what happened? I mean, take that through. You bought him at an auction, and what did you do?
So thoroughbred horses have a tattoo in the upper part of their lip that identifies who they are. They're now more using microchips. Microchips are starting to become very
thank God. At least there's something
relevant in this. But for years, they tattooed the upper part of their lip. And thoroughbred horses can be traced that way. Okay. So that's how I was able to find out who his owner was. Oh. And I reached out and was like, hey, I have this horse. And because there's so much money involved in race horses, their races are very documented, and I was able to find his whole history there. And he didn't get rid of him because he was injured. He just wasn't fast enough. And so these racetrack trainers are very into knowing that these horses come in. If they're not performing, they've got to go. Yeah. And they don't have time to go around try to find good homes for these horses. They know that they can
interest.
They can call this guy, and this horse will be on the trailer the next day. Wow. And that stall will be empty for the next horse that's coming in. So I did reach out to them, and I was like, hey, I have his horse. And they're like, oh, we'll send you a donation to help cover all this. And they sent $1,000. And I was like, that doesn't even cover his intake and rescue. Wow. Yeah. But the racing industry is something that there's a very dark side to it. Yeah. And there are hundreds and thousands of horses that disappear in the slaughter pipeline. And a lot of the people that are involved in the racing industry, they do not want their horses' stories to be told.
Of course not.
So Stardust, I'm sure that was not what the president of MGM wanted to hear, that, his horse got there. So there was a trader that was getting thoroughbreds from, these owners and these horse trainers that were training them. And he started burning the tattoos off in their lips so they couldn't be traced, because rescuing these horses and telling their stories, it's making bad publicity, bad press on the racing industry on those trainers specifically, because they're very wealthy people usually.
Right. And well known often, like this
if
person.
you have enough money to be paying $30,000+ on a horse and then just basically throw it away 3 months later, you're going to be doing that over and over again. So you don't want those horses with their identities getting out there.
So now they're burning them up.
And so I was at an auction, and there was a group of thoroughbreds, and they had their lips burnt, and they were super swollen. It was terrible. And then the Jockey Club does try to prevent horses. Like, I really appreciate that they actually are like, no, this is not okay. So they will try to, know who these trainers are that are shipping horses out. But they started microchipping horses after that fact. Okay. And I think that is really, really good, because I think more and more horse traders would have been burning the lips of thoroughbred tattoos to try to
hide it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, what about your safety and something like that? Like you just said publicly, this is, you didn't say his name, but this is the president of MGM. Probably easy for me to go Google it and find out in 1 minute. Is that not dangerous for you? And have you been threatened, or have you had anybody, approach you or anything? So what do they say? What's their
So
shtick?
Typically, in situations, it comes down to like a animal seizure situation, and those can be very sticky, and those can be very dangerous, because you're going in usually with law enforcement and removing animals that they want. And typically, in all cases, almost 100% of the cases that I've been in, there are the favorite horses that the person has, and those horses are well fed and taken care of. And then there are horses that people have that they don't really care about, and those ones aren't getting the feed, and those ones are starving. So in this particular case, there were starving horses, and there were horses that were being taken care of well, and animal control came in and they did take them. I was not part of the seizure, but afterwards those horses came to our facility for adoption. And you're supposed to have an appointment and be approved to adopt, before you show up. And the two folks showed up, and they're like, "Oh, we want a riding horse and all this stuff. We want to look at the horses." And I'm like, "Okay." And I took them out to see the horses. Now, one of the horses that were seized, she was pregnant when she was seized, and she had this beautiful little paint baby. I mean, just the cutest little thing, white and brown, and she was just adorable. And I took him into the pen, and this baby was very independent, was not hanging out with its mom off in the corner. And they immediately were like, "Oh, we really like that one." And I'm like, "Okay." So we went over to see the baby, and I'm like, she's really cute. So yeah. Everyone liked her. Yeah. And then they looked over in the herd of horses where her mom was, and her mom was just a solid chestnut color on one side. And she had a little white spot on the other side, but you couldn't see that. So she was with a bunch of other chestnut horses. And they looked at her and they're like, "Oh, that must be the mom." And immediately I'm like, "Oh, great."
You were suspicious.
These are the people that these horses were seized from. So I turned on my phone and started recording. And I'm like, "Well, they're not available for adoption right now." And I went through this spill with them
because you recognized that was what
I knew from the questions they were asking
that they already knew
they were after the horses that came from that seizure case.
Right. Okay.
And so I videoed them trying to convince me to sell them their horses. I'm like, "We don't sell horses here," and like, "But we got cash." And it was they didn't realize that they were being videoed. And finally, we did have them leave, and I took that footage to, they were not supposed to even come in contact with horses. I think they're supposed to stay.
Oh my gosh!
Horses. So
wow,
documented them breaking all their rules that were set up for them to be released from jail, and I took it in and gave it to them. And afterwards, the guy, he ended up going back in jail, but I got a call from, I think it was the district attorney, saying that they found out that that guy took a contract out on animal control.
Oh,
And they were putting the animal control officers in bulletproof vest, and they're like,
wow.
You videoed this, and he is extremely angry, so you need to be extremely careful as well. So I've always carried since that day, because we deal with a lot of really crazy situations. Another situation which was really bizarre, we do humanely euthanize horses on request from owners. Like if somebody brings us a horse that's older and, starting to suffer, and they can't afford to euthanize it, we can have it done here. We have 2 full-time veterinarians at our facility. And someone brought us horses there were some that did need humane euthanasia. I like to call the last act of kindness, because it's the last thing we can do for them. And this one horse, they wanted euthanized. It was perfectly fine. And the vet looked at him and he's like, this horse is fine. He doesn't need euthanasia. And so we did not euthanize that horse. And those people got so, they started stalking me. They started coming to my church. They sit right behind me, like, breathing down my neck. And then,
do you know why they wanted it euthanized
I have no idea. And
wow, so unusual. The behavior is so odd.
It's wild. So I was actually at a church social, and they came, and the guy actually ended up hitting me, and I had to get like a court order for him to stay away from me. Like, it's really bizarre, the things that happen in horse rescue.
Yeah, I don't get this. These were horses again from a racing situation?
No, this was just a person that had horses and surrendered them over and wanted them destroyed. And I'm like, this was fine. Yeah. And that was one of the most bizarre cases, because I'm like, how could you be upset that your horse is like, getting a new home? So it's
very hard to understand. Yeah.
It's a roller coaster. The rescued life with horses is just, you just try to do the best you can every day, and you never know what is going to happen.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about this, the funnel. What do you call it? The tunnel or the
water pipeline?
Pipeline, yeah.
Yes.
So, because I don't think, you alluded before to the fact that horses end up going to Mexico for slaughter to be made into food. And then there's also, you have horses that have, not you, but in the U.S., there's horses, I think the bigger, fatter horses have tended to go to Canada, also for slaughter, I guess. Are all for meat?
Yeah, so...
and who's buying this meat, and do they know it's horse meat? Just to throw those out there.
In other countries, horse meat is considered a delicacy.
Okay.
So they definitely know they're eating it.
Okay.
There's a demand for horse meat.
Did not know that. All right.
There's even in other countries, there's even like a raw horse meat ice cream. Like we would put nuts in our vanilla ice cream or something. They actually have ice cream with raw chunks of horse meat in it. Sushi. There's actually horses from Canada that are flown in airplanes over to another country to be slaughtered in that country for sushi.
What countries are these?
Japan,
can you name countries?
Belgium, Japan, Belgium, France. There's these countries who really love eating horse meat. And years ago, horses were shipped almost equally to Mexico and Canada. There used to be slaughterhouses in the United States, but they have been shut down. There were slaughterhouses in Texas, and there was so much public outcry that those slaughterhouses got shut down. They were very mismanaged to the point that there was blood running in the streets from horses being slaughtered, and just they didn't have their waste taken care of properly, and it was causing a lot of problems. And the USDA doesn't have funding currently in their budget for horses to be slaughter horses to be inspected.
Is it a felony in the U.S. now?
So there are certain states like California. It's every horse that is exported out of the state for slaughter for human consumption is that's a felony for that horse. The law was put in place in 97 and was like 2014-ish. They finally did their first arrest, and it was an auction owner who ended up sending a stolen horse to Canada for slaughter. And he got busted. And we actually did a lot of undercover work at his auction. And a lot of these auctions are very hostile to rescuers.
Of course.
Yes, because
you're rescuers. Yeah.
What happened? There was an auction here in Tennessee that we went to like every month for like almost 10 years. And we would see abuse there, but nothing would happen if you report it. Nothing happens because these horses are in transit to go to slaughter. So in the cattle industry or these things, there's different departments within like the USDA and things that govern how these animals can be treated. Because there's no department covering this in the United States, that horses are one of the most abused animals on their way to slaughter because there's no oversight.
So they're not only suffering when they're slaughtered, they're suffering. I know I've seen some of your videos that they get no food, no water. You mentioned some horses that were, I had to actually like fast forward through some things because you're so strong to be able to look at the actual abuse. And as much as you love horses, I can't imagine the pain that causes you. But to see the sweat, you mentioned these two, they just put them in any kind of a U-Haul or something with no airflow, and it's 120 degrees in there, and the abuse is full,
rampant
from start to finish, and they may be dying of hunger and thirst and overheat before they even get to the slaughterhouse.
Yeah, I think the death at the slaughterhouse is horrific, but what happens within the slaughter pipeline is equally, if not more, horrific because the suffering is so prolonged. With these horses in the United States, they go from one auction to another, and it's very common for us to get horses that may have had 4 to 5 auction tags at one point. So they glue these tags onto their body, so their hair, and you can see where they've been removed because the glue is still there, or the hair is completely ripped off. It's like if somebody waxed there, like there's no hair there.
Yeah.
And these horses are going from one auction to another, and they're picking up diseases. They're getting injured. There was the one auction here in Tennessee where someone purchased a horse, and in Tennessee, this really needs to change. But the way the law is, if you own an animal, you can castrate an animal. So even a dog or a cat, you could literally, in Tennessee, tie your dog down on a table.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Just do it yourself with that.
On your animal with no painkillers. It's a law that needs to change, and horse castration is a very complicated thing to do. And there was a horse that was at the auction, and somebody purchased it and took it in the back and tried to perform an operation on it, and it actually herniated, and we ended up having to buy the horse so we could humanely euthanize the horse, because obviously after they botched that surgery operation, they didn't want it. And after I'm like, we have seen so much, but this is something that can change if people know what happens in Tennessee. And that, you should have a veterinarian castrate, your dogs and cats and horses. And,
of course.
I thought, we need to try to start changing the law for this. And as soon as I made a petition to try to change the law, the auction kicked us out and has not allowed us to come back.
Yeah, of course. Of course, I've seen you wear disguises, so you're pretty good at going in undercover.
So, yes, and when the auctions kick out animal rescuers, you know one thing, that abuse is rampant at that auction because they don't want people there that are speaking out about what's happening.
Right.
Horses don't, that, you know, from one auction to a next, they can be in horrific condition. Law enforcement's not going to do anything. So what these traders like to do is, if a horse is in rough shape, they'll try to replace it with a fatter horse at another auction.
Oh.
So if they have their semi-truck, they'll unload their horses, kind of sort out ones they're like, well, maybe they'll sell off and I can replace them with fatter horses. So there gets to be this group of horses in the slaughter pipeline that are in really rough shape.
Emaciated.
Nobody wants them.
Yeah.
And these horses a lot of times just die in auction yards or die in the semi-trucks.
Oh, it's so hard to hear. Yeah.
Nobody wants them. And if law enforcement comes in, it's like, man, here's this horse in really rough shape. All the trader has to do is like, look, I just bought this horse a couple days ago at another auction. I'm bringing it here because hopefully somebody fix it. I didn't do this to this horse.
Uh-huh.
And the law enforcement like, oh, okay, well, you know, hopefully, you know, like, and auctions are places where animal control will even tell people to send their emaciated horses.
Wow.
Like, so if law enforcement comes to someone's house and is like, man, your horse is really skinny, you can't have this horse, you got 3 days to get rid of it or get it medical care, they'll take it to an auction. So you have a system in the United States that's financially awarding animal abusers for abusing horses by encouraging them to take them to auctions. And the traders within the pipeline are getting rewarded financially for picking up these abused animals and selling them into the slaughter pipeline.
It's a lot of legislation that needs to happen here.
A lot.
So, and which I know you work on. I want to get to that in a little while. What kind of numbers are you seeing? How many horses are going to slaughter, let's just say, being shipped out of the United States every year? Do you know that number?
So right now, we are almost at 9,000 horses that have been exported into Mexico. Canada has...
Wait, since when?
Since the beginning of this year.
Of this year. So 9,000 already to Mexico this year.
Yeah.
That's astonishing.
It's horrible.
I don't think people have any idea.
And this is why this abuse continues, because it's a secret that the kill buyers are raking in millions from. And it's a very hard subject because just like you're struggling with a lot of things that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
To actually realize what's happening to this racehorse that was on the racetrack 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Nobody wants to know about it. And so as long as there's not a public outcry happening, it's just going to continue. And
it's so covered up with like, let's go get a big hat and I mean, I feel lucky that I've learned from my daughter so many years ago about the truth of so many animal industries, and also from her husband, Chris, who maybe we can talk about has helped you out. People don't, they don't want to hear it because I just see it every year when the, Derby comes along and everyone, and I just wanted to tell everybody, what are you doing? I don't even know that, I didn't know the tip of how bad it is. But I still, as you said at the top of the show, that every time an animal is used in any kind of rodeo or circus or any kind of entertainment, let alone food, that's a whole nother level, but there's always going to be a commodity mindset. Mm-hmm. The horses that are pulling the carts down the streets of New York City, they're so romantic, and it's and we just hear little tidbits. We don't ever get the full story, and that's why I'm so appreciative that you're telling us this stuff, even though it's hard and it's hard to hear and it's hard for me to hear and hard for people to listen to. It's really important that we know, so that you can't take action if you don't know. So I appreciate your willingness to go through it and really get into some of the nitty gritty details, because you don't want to hear it. So how many have gone to Canada, just to finish that thought, or do you know?
So Canada has greatly reduced the number of horses getting shipped from the United States, because horses are given all kinds of drugs here in the United States. Painkillers. Most of the horses, it's definitely race horses are given all kinds of things to keep them
steroids and
And then you have the horses that, maybe an older horse that someone has, and they're giving them bute, which is a painkiller.
Mm-hmm.
These drugs are not approved for animals intended for human consumption. Because in the States, we're not.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So horses are given a host of drugs that are very harmful for humans. And so they started realizing, this was a while ago, that horse meat was causing birth defects and a lot of health problems, cancer and everything. And it was from the drugs that are given these horses. So Canada started saying, well, no, we don't want America horses unless they've been given a time to go through the withdrawal from the drugs they're given. So their meat is safe. And then they tried that. The papers were just being falsified. Like, these traders are not going to keep horses around. And so Canada has more and more put restrictions on horses coming in from the United States into their country for slaughter.
Okay, well, good, I guess.
It's helping. It's putting down completely. It's really sad that, so many people are born with birth defects and got cancer and things from eating horse meat because it's toxic. And so ultimately, the amount of horses going into Canada is a very, very small amount for what it used to be. There's only there's some really big players in Canada that is involved with horse slaughter, and they're to the point that they are not releasing the numbers of horses exported. But we know that through their export pens that, a lot of them are being shut down. So we know the demand is greatly decreasing for horses being shipped to Canada. A lot of Canadians are realizing what's happening. And there's public outcry there that is helping end horse slaughter in Canada. But they are still shipping horses in live shipments in huge cargo planes over to Japan for sushi. It's terrible. It's so terrible. And I think if most people knew about this, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about this because it wasn't happening.
No, and again, it's like anything where there's an endangered species, like there's dolphin meat, all these things in Japan, in many countries, but it's the source. You have to get the people who are buying it at the restaurants. I mean, this horse sushi or horse chunks and ice cream, it's so mind-boggling that could be a delicacy, but this is true, shark fins. So all these types of things that are, cause abuse in the industry, they, as long as there's a demand, people are going to find a way to make it happen. But again, if you have the more legislation you have around it, the more that you can help that. Can you just maybe more briefly talk about some of the other industries? Because we talked about the racehorse industry, but there's a lot of other situations where horses are abused and need to be, investigated.
So in Tennessee, there's the Tennessee walking horses, and they are shown with this artificial gait. And a lot of people have no idea that Tennessee walking horses aren't supposed to do this really high step.
Just sort of a real...
They don't do that naturally. And so a lot of people have no clue what it takes to make that happen. And they will actually put these huge stacks on these Tennessee walking horses. And it's like putting a horse in high heels.
Stacks underneath the hoof.
Yes.
The
as
hooves.
Ridiculous as it is, it's basically putting a horse in a high heel shoe. And the shoe could weigh, 8 to 10 pounds sometimes. It's very heavy.
Okay.
And the horse's hoof is strapped and nailed to this high heel horseshoe.
This is for training?
No, they live in them. So when a horse is wearing that, they can't run out in the pasture. They can't live a life like a horse should. So they have to be confined in a stall unless they're being trained. And the training is there's only one way to achieve this artificial gait is through it's just through abuse and suffering. So they will put like if say this is the horse's leg here and the shoe is connected here, they
Mm-hmm.
will put diesel oil, mustard oil, anything that would kind of burn the horse's skin. And they'll actually wrap it with saran wrap and let those chemicals cook in. And then they'll put a chain around that horse's leg. And this is so barbaric, and it's still happening today. Like there's so many laws that need to be changed for horses. So they'll put the chain on there, and when they're training them, they're having them move with this very painful skin. And so when the horse is moving, it's flinching because that chain is hitting that
Oh
skin.
my God, this is barbaric is exactly
It's
what that
so
word
barbaric. And so they flinch up because of the pain. And that flinch is the artificial high step that they have at these horse shows.
So they're at horse shows. So everyone at the show knows that these horses are you're just watching them suffer with every single step.
They try to say that they're not suffering, and it's a wonderful training that they do, and there's nothing bad. But there's, like, if you go onto Google and say, how do you train a horse to do the big lick?
Yeah.
There's nothing there. You can go and say, how do I train a horse to, jump? How do I train a horse to, do barrel racing? How do I train a horse? And there'll be videos and trainers explaining how to do this.
Okay.
In the big leg Tennessee walking horse world, there's silence because it's all abuse. And it is something that needs to be completely outlawed. And when I go to Washington, D.C., I'm very focused on the SAFE Act, which would shut down horses being exported out of the United States for slaughter. And then the PAST Act, which would end this abuse to Tennessee walking horses.
And when you say Tennessee walking horses, are they limited to Tennessee, or is that just a term?
So it's a breed.
Oh, it's a breed. Oh, okay.
Horse.
You can see my lack of knowledge here.
Yeah.
So that could be happening in anywhere.
Yeah,
the Tennessee walking horse.
Within the last, over the last 5 years, a lot of places have shut down the shows. So it used to be able to go to Panama, Florida, and they would all go down there and they would show their Tennessee walking horses down there.
Yeah.
And now they don't anymore because it got shut down. As people learn what's happening, abuse is done away with.
Right.
And so I'm very hopeful that Tennessee walking horses soon will be shown for their natural ability. Like, they do have a very nice, smooth, natural gait. They're very beautiful horses with a natural ability. And that's how they should be shown, not for their artificial gait that's only achieved through abuse and suffering.
My goodness. Okay. So, and I want to talk about the other situations where there's abuse. And then also I want to know what you're doing in Washington, like when you go to Washington, I want to know what that looks like and maybe what other people can do to support that legislation that you're trying to get passed, or people are, I guess you're not the only one. There's other people working on legislation. So
you would hope, but sadly from the horse side, there's not that many people actually up there saying, let's change the laws for horses. And it's
well, sometimes it's easier to
learn. It was shocking for me to learn that because I assumed that there was these really big organizations out there that millions and millions of dollars, and I'm like, okay, we're here with our boots on the ground helping the horses. They've got the legislation stuff
but they
covered.
don't.
But once I was up in Washington, I talked to other lobbyists, and they're like, we've never seen one of those folks from that, those organizations here in the last 3 years. So basically they're just behind the desk sending information, which, I mean, that's helpful, but
right. But you have to be actually lobbying in person. That's how this country works.
Yes. Go in person. And, for me, when I go to Washington, D.C., I'm talking from over 20 years of experience of what I've seen happen. Yeah. And I bring pictures and videos, and I'm by the time I leave the meeting with most of them, like, we had no idea that it was happening like this, and now we know this is happening. So I feel like the work in Washington, D.C. that we're doing is very important, because none of us can do this forever, and I would love to be like, we never have to rescue another horse from slaughter because it's outlawed. And our organization is here to help horses with their owners and deal with that situation, like most dog and cat rescues do in shelters. They don't have these guys driving around picking up dogs and cats to ship them to slaughter. But in the horse world, as rescuers we do.
Okay, talk about the wild horses a little bit. I'm curious about that situation because there's a lore around wild mustangs, running, especially where I live in the West. Everything, people picture these like groups of horses being happy, and running across Wyoming and Colorado and wherever, Montana, Utah, I don't know where all, New Mexico. Yeah. So what is the situation with that actually?
So the situation for the wild horses is very grim. I personally believe, from the research I have done, that horses were probably here before they were brought to the United States.
Oh, really? They're indigenous also?
I believe so.
All
from
right.
my research that I've done is, I truly think that horses were originally here. There's actually a lot of fossil evidence of horses being here, and that they actually were from here, and they went to other countries across, land bridges and whatnot. And so I'm like, okay. And there was also buffalo that were, in the fossil record as well with horses. Mm-hmm. There are buffalo here today.
Oh, yeah.
There are horses here today. And if you were bringing horses in a ship across the ocean, and you realize that there was horses in the United States, you wouldn't be
stop bringing them.
Well, you wouldn't say like, oh yeah, it was stupid for us to bring horses because they're already there. You'd be like, of course we brought horses here. But where I go with this too is if you go back to the petroglyphs and everything of like the native people who were here,
right?
There is very old, villages and things that were before horses were supposed to have arrived here, and they have horses and they're riding on the rocks.
Oh, they do. So what is the belief, the more widespread belief, that they were brought from Europe by the pilgrims sort of thing?
By ships,
so
for
just after
to ride. And so I feel
that
like, and I've spoke with some different folks, and it does seem to believe that horses may have been here all along.
Yeah.
Which that would completely change the shift of how wild horses are viewed.
Oh, I see. So it has relevance today to the treatment of wild horses.
Because they're considered an invasive species right now.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding.
And
are there that many of them?
They consider them that way, and there's a lot of cattle ranchers who want the land that wild horses are on.
I see.
And
oh my goodness.
So the land can be leased out to make money by the ranchers. So the wild horses are rounded up, and there's a lot of really bad mismanagement within the BLM and the wild horses. The people that they have managing these horse programs are not really horse people, so they really don't know. So they have like helicopters rounding these horses up. And they could be rounded up for miles and miles and miles. There's a lot of injuries that happen to these horses.
They scare them, right?
And
they spook them.
They will round them up and put them in holding pens. These horses have different family bands. So you have a stallion, and he has, this group of mares, and that's his family. And they're very strong connections there because, for years, horses can live, and they herd animals. They're very connected to their family bands. And so these helicopters will round up multiple families and put them all in one area as they kind of get them chased into these corrals. And so then you have the stallions fighting, trying to protect their mares.
Yeah.
So they have to remove the stallions. A lot of horses get injured in this process. And when they take them away to these holding pens for adoption, these horses aren't really getting adopted into really good homes. And we rescue hundreds and hundreds of BLM horses, BLM wild horses. They brand them on their neck with the freeze brand. So we know that the BLM government did, these are government horses. They're rounded up by the government, and they're branded by the government. So we know that, that is a Mustang that was once wild. And these horses are being shipped by the droves to Mexico for slaughter.
Oh, and does the BLM know that?
Oh yeah,
They know that, and wow. So wait, is it still legal? Then is it? It must be legal to ship them to Mexico.
So wild horses, if you went to adopt a wild horse, the BLM would say you need to have this horse for 1 year, and we will then give you title for that horse. So
Okay.
you can't really do anything during that year. You're not supposed to. And then because you can adopt the horse for like $100, and sometimes they go on sale for $25, basically. Mm-hmm. So you keep that horse for a year. Then the government gives you a title that you completely own that horse. And you can do whatever you want with that horse if it's titled, including ship it to slaughter. What we find a lot are horses that are not titled in the slaughter pipeline, and nobody's checking because there's no oversight for horses in the slaughter pipeline. So a lot of horses are rounded up and then ultimately go to slaughter relatively quickly.
So, all right, let's shift a little bit. There's so much bad news. Let's shift a little bit to good news. I want to talk about your organization a little bit more. You have a really lovely video on your website, which shows how you started when you were 19 and all the different locations. You were, I think, 4 or 5 in California where you grew up, and that's where you first. And then at some point, I don't know what year it was exactly, you moved to the southeast, and now you're in Tennessee. How long have you been at this current location?
So it's 9 years.
9 years, yeah. And this is your forever home, right?
Yeah, Horse Plus is very rooted in Tennessee. Yeah.
Well, talk about your facility a little bit, because it's massive, really, at this point.
It really is massive. So we relocated to Tennessee because the need was so great for horses in Tennessee. In California, there's a lot of resources for animals. There's a lot of laws to protect them.
Right.
And we came to Tennessee and we realized, at these auctions, there's just semi-trucks loading up horses to go directly to slaughter. There's the Big Lick with the Tennessee walking horses. And there's all these things. And we were like, I think we're really needed in Tennessee. Yeah. And of course, everyone has haters out there if you're doing anything at all. Yeah. And haters are like, oh, they got ran out of California because they were doing bad things in California and they couldn't be in California anymore. But here we left, we actually were recognized at the Capitol and received an award for the work we did in California.
Oh, congratulations.
So I'm like, yeah, they gave us an
Not
award.
so much. And then we ran out of town.
Yes, for our hard work.
But can you describe the facility? Because I think you have 30,000 square feet of covered area?
When we moved to Tennessee, this property where our facility was completely bare land. And so we have been building ever since. And sometimes it'll start slowing down and then it's like, okay, well, maybe this is kind of where we're at. And then we'll get a donation and it's like, okay, we can do this now. And so we have a very nice office with a media department in there. So we're able to film and put out what our organization is doing.
Really important. Yeah.
We have a lot of barns for horses to come in and different animals. And then we have a on-site vet hospital. It's a huge, massive building. And we have 2 full-time veterinarians that work here. And it's amazing to have full-time veterinarian staff.
Huge. And to have 2 of them. Mm-hmm. Plus, you probably have people that help the vets, I'm guessing. Yeah.
And for the amount of animals that we rescue, having the veterinarians here on site is just, we have to have that. And then we have, training barns and barns for hay. And we're currently right now expanding our quarantine area, which will help us rescue more horses. Mm. And
how many do you take in? I guess I don't know what I'll rescue in a year. Would you say, or does it change every year? I'm sure.
Usually, we help around 2,000 plus horses and other animals a year. We help a lot of horses at our own facility, but we also give out grants to organizations across the United States and also even the world to help with their animals as well.
Yeah, that's just amazing. Because where does your funding come from? Is it 100% donations? Is it grants? Because you must have really attracted a lot of donors to create such a huge facility and operation.
So we do the best we can every day and tell our story. And it's through public support. So we don't have like some government grant that gives us this nice budget that we can operate with every year. It's people finding out about the work we do. And sometimes like you never know who's watching.
Oh.
Hold on. There we go. You have to cut that out. Sorry.
Just life.
Yes. We received in the mail an estate from Bob Barker after he passed away. And it was just amazing. $100,000 to Horse Plus from his estate. And his goal was to die without having a penny to his name because he wanted his money to be helping animals. But after he passed away, there was some left over and it was distributed. But, you never know who's watching you. And the work we do, we try to just show the reality of what's happening to horses and animals. And it's through public support. And so people just like yourself is learning about the work we're doing. And
it's amazing.
It's all through just public support.
So you don't even apply for grants? It's all from individuals or organizations making donations?
So we do apply for grants, but the problem is there's not really horse grants out there available. So we have gotten some grants to do different projects, but it's basically through like the big animal welfare organizations in the United States that are like collecting tons of donations without having actual shelters and caring for animals. And it's just a drop in the bucket for the budget because there's a lot of conception of like, okay, if I want to support animals, I'll support either one of those two big organizations in the United States. But really, if you want to help animals, you need to be supporting the organizations in your community that are actually doing the work.
I see. Well, that, first of all, that donation from Bob Barker is amazing. I know he was
unbelievable.
He was more, did he ask for that to be directed not to horses, but to other animals, but to dogs and cats? Because I saw that you were doing something with spay and neutering and things that are more, dog and cat oriented.
So his estate was opened for us to be able to use how our board of directors decided to.
I see.
And in his honor, we wanted to keep a legacy going for him. Spay neuter was something that was very passionate and deeply connected to him. So we are in the process of building a spay neuter clinic for our community.
Oh my gosh.
And then also we're building an education center here at our main facility. So we can continue educating people on, topics like this, like we're discussing, but also mentoring other organizations and bringing in law enforcement for training. And there's just a whole host of things that we can do through education that Bob Barker made possible. So,
oh my gosh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Up to our board of directors to decide, and the decision was that we wanted to keep his legacy going. So half of it was split for the spay neuter clinic and then half for the education center.
So, education's everything. And, before we came on, we were talking a little bit about my son-in-law who put us together. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because honestly, that was a person to person connection. And that's, I think, mostly how things happen. Like I said, my daughter's the one who taught us a long time ago not to do, how animals are treated in circuses. And Chris has been really, son-in-law's been really, pivotal in helping different animal rights organizations over the years. But tell me just a little bit about how you met him and how that affected your organization.
So, usually within rescue work, within the first 3 to 6 years, people become very burnt out because they worked harder than they ever have before in their life. And they start getting haters that are picking apart everything they do. And it's can be very challenging.
And it's financially a struggle.
Very much.
Yeah.
So So Chris found us through watching what we did. We told our story, and he found us, and he made a donation. I was going to go rescue horses from auction, and he donated like $5,000, and it was like one of our largest donations we've ever received at the time.
Yeah.
And then I called him and thanked him, like, we rescued all these horses, and thank you so much. And he's like, well, now that you rescued them, I want to give you another $5,000 to help take care of them. And I was so blown away by his generosity. And I ended up talking with him over for years. And, I started opening up about some of the struggles of, rescue work. And he's such a great business mind. And he was mentoring us so much from the aspect of, how to, a lot of times when you start a rescue, you're not really focused on that it's a business.
Right. You're more on the actual work that you're doing. Yeah.
And so you focus so much on the animal side of it that you kind of let your organization fall apart on the business side of it.
Right.
And so Chris was a huge, just a huge mentor in those early days of Horse Plus, just encouraging me to look at all the different aspects of rescue and treating it like a business. And, it was just something for years that, like, I knew I could call him and be like, what should I do in this situation? And he would guide and mentor us. And, when we started, we used to rescue only the horses that I felt we could adopt out. And at these auctions, a lot of the horses are drugged because they don't want them to show that they're pain, they're lame. And when I was at these auctions, I was trying to pick these adoptable horses to rescue. And I ended up, a lot of them needed humane euthanasia. Like, we'd rescue them and come to find out they're in chronic pain.
Right. You've got it. Yeah.
And I went to this one auction, and there was these two horses, and one was super, super old, and the other one was super old, and it was lame. And I had the thought process of, like, oh, well, some nice people are going to get these horses, and everything's going to be great.
But it wasn't really going to happen.
And they went through the auction ring, and they were purchased by the kill buyer. And after the auction, I watched them get loaded up on the slaughter trucks. And it hit me that I was like, those horses should have been rescued and taken to a vet and given the last act of kindness instead of have a horrific death at a slaughterhouse. And that really pivotably changed my outlook at that point of how rescuing should be done for horses. Like, every horse deserves to be rescued, regardless of age, condition, medical issues. And so I talked with Chris about this, and I'm like, I feel like I should rescue horses that need humane euthanasia. And he was like, every animal deserves love and respect. It doesn't matter if they're adoptable or they're not. And so we started openly talking about rescuing animals that needed euthanasia. And that opened up such a host of haters out there. I was shocked because, like, these horses are going to a horrible, brutal death. Why
would they hate about that?
If you are rescuing them from that horrible fate and giving them humane euthanasia, it's so much better than what would have happened in Mexico.
Right. So why would people complain about that? Why would anybody care?
Anti-euthanasia. Well, that horse could have found a home. Well, why aren't you at the auction saving it?
God, you can't win for losing, can you?
Really can't.
Yeah.
And when all of that started happening, emotionally that hits rescuers really hard because you're trying to do your best. And then you got on social media and people tearing you apart. And it was really, really affecting me. And I think to the point that I almost think that if Chris was not there during that time, I don't know.
Might have given up.
I don't know if Horse Plus would be going today.
Wow.
Because you work harder than you ever have before in your life. You're doing everything you possibly can. And then you have these haters out there just trying to destroy everything you're doing. And something that Chris told me that it stuck with me is that he's like, you can have a row of trees and one tree has apples on it. And that's the tree that people are going to throw rocks at because you're doing something and you're doing something good. And so that really, really stuck with me through all of these years.
Very visual, yeah.
Just, if you're doing something positive, people will tear you apart.
Yeah. I don't know what that is, but he's right. And well, that's really, I did not have any idea you were going to come up with so many stories. And I think that it's of course lovely for me to hear and for him to hear. But I think what's also really important about the story is that not everybody has money or time to give, but to mentor somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes it's a lonely road, even though you're doing it with your husband and I'm sure you've amassed a number. I saw one gentleman's been volunteering for 20 years, I think. And I mean, so you have brought together a great community, but sometimes you just need someone to talk to. And, for anyone who can mentor someone in any kind of a nonprofit or any kind of a business, even whatever it is, it's worth its weight in gold. So that's really an encouragement to people to help other people just with advice or to be an ear or to be I'm here, so that's really fun and great to hear that whole story. We're so running out of time. I want to ask a couple more things and then we'll wrap it up. But one is just how best can people help you? Is it spreading the word? Is it making donation? Is it both? What's your number one need?
I think the number one need that I need people to do is educate themselves about what's happening to horses in the slaughterhouses and in the slaughter pipeline.
Okay.
Because if that will happen, all of this abuse and suffering that I deal with day in and day out won't be happening.
Okay.
Like, there will still be issues with horse welfare, but the slaughter aspect, if that could be taken away, that would be the most amazing thing. And that can only happen through people educating themselves and being a voice for horses. So that's my number one ask is, take the time to figure out what you can do, even if it's just calling your representative and being like, please support the SAFE Act to end horse slaughter.
Where can we find out what the current legislative, it's on your website for sure, right? It is on the website. We've just been updating our website, so it will be on there. And we'll have the website in the show notes, but can you go ahead and just say what it is for people who are listening?
It's horseplus.org.
Horseplus.org. Very easy. Yep.
And with the SAFE Act and the PAST Act, the SAFE Act is, I think, the most important because that would end horse slaughter. So calling your representative and asking them to support the SAFE Act and the PAST Act, it doesn't take, maybe 10 minutes of your time, and everyone can do that. And it's so critically important. And I think you've probably learned enough through this podcast to take what you've learned here and be the voice for horses.
Yeah. And I just know because my daughter works in that. She works with state representatives and she's taken those calls. And if 4 or 5 people call on one topic, they're like, what's going on? There must be something. I mean, it does not take many people. So don't think that your one voice doesn't matter because it actually really does. And if you get 5 friends to call or write, that's how they make laws. That's how they pay attention.
I really hope that everyone that listens to this podcast will make that call to your representative to make change for horses. On the front here at our organization, donations are always needed. Every month we're rescuing horses, intercepting them from being shipped to slaughter. And it cost about $1,000 for us to rescue a horse and give it just its initial intake care with the veterinarians and everything that horse is right on. That's a lot,
yeah.
Whether that horse needs the last act of kindness or it's adoptable, it's $1,000 right off the bat for our organization. So you can help rescue a horse and know that you helped a horse from going to slaughter. So that's definitely a way. We have a lot of different programs at our organization. We have also, like estate planning. Like a lot of people don't plan for what's going to happen to them if something was to happen and they have animals. And I know right now there's a case where one of our followers, she passed away and she left us in her will, but she didn't make plans for her horse. And her lawyer almost sent her horse to auction where we've been shipped to slaughter. And I'm like, no.
Oh my goodness. After all.
sure that horse is taken care of, because that's what that person would have wanted for her horse.
Okay.
So
My goodness.
it's very important to, think about, what is the legacy that you want to have? And if you have animals, what is the safety net for them? Because anything could happen. I mean, we could be driving down the road and a car come and
I know. Yeah.
it could be done. And the animals that we love so much, they need to make sure, we need to make sure that we're caring for them and have plans for them. So that's very important.
Right. And not just if it's a dog, but no matter what kind of animal you're talking about. No matter what. Fish,
if you have a
anything.
If you have a goldfish, have a plan. If something was to happen to me, I want you to take my goldfish and give them a good home. I mean, it's very important. And it's something a lot of people don't think about.
Right. Right.
And so then there's just so many ways you can help. And if horse rescue is not your thing and you're like, well, Horse Plus has got way too much going on and I want to support locally, I mean, your donations are greatly appreciated, but supporting your local animal shelters, your local nonprofits that are in animal welfare, that is so much more critical for helping animals than seeing an ad from a big national organization on TV and sending.
That's good to know. Yeah.
They have millions and millions of dollars that never even go to help a single animal. And supporting your local animal shelters, your local organizations is key and critical. And you can go visit them. You can see what your money is going towards.
Right.
And
such good advice. Such good advice.
Transparent organizations. We try to be as transparent as we can. We try to film everything. We put it out for everyone to see. But, really focus on doing the most good and researching what is the most good I can do with the resources I have. And definitely plan for your pets if something was to happen. Make sure that they're taken care of. So, I mean,
your authenticity is so apparent, from the minute we started the interview till now. It's just, if you can if someone does want to support a local organization, to find that person who it's just so obvious when somebody's saying things like that, like take care of your pets, take care of your local, nonprofits, rather than like, send us money. Yeah. And also, I guess the last point I wanted to mention is that you also help around the world. You're not just, so, you're helping, you're adopting them, you're euthanizing them if necessary. You're doing a lot of things, but you're also then helping train other people. And now, what do you do worldwide? Because what does that entail?
Yeah. So we give out grants to other organizations that may be trying to help horses. So we feel very firmly that humane euthanasia is a very kind gift for suffering horses, and especially to keep them from just being dumped into the slaughter pipeline. So we offer humane euthanasia assistance and then also castration, so gelding assistance for horses. So we're not just backyard breeding.
Right.
And then we also do kind of urgent need grants. So one of the most recent ones that we've done, there's an organization in Indonesia. And in Indonesia, on this little island, they can only rescue, the only horses are used on the island. They won't allow vehicles on the island because it's small. Mm-hmm. And so these horses are used, and they're kind of short horses, so they're technically ponies, but they're used to haul everything around on the island in carts. And the water got shut off to the island, and there's 250 horses on the island. And we've helped them rescue a lot of these horses, because when they're done using them for pulling carts, they're usually slaughtered. And so we've helped rescue a lot of them on the island. Wow. And there's actually this horse shelter there, and this wonderful lady who helps take care of all these horses. But the water got shut off. And so now all these horses are without water. And it was costing about $50 a day to bring water in on a boat from another island to water all the horses. So we sent her financial assistance to help cover 25 days of watering these horses while the water situation was getting figured out.
Is that kind of information on your website, that how people could contact you to get grants or something like that? Or
They can. So we have the Full Circle Life Horse Shelter Network is a network we're building. We're thanks to Chris mentoring us, we're trying to mentor other organizations. So over the last 5 years, we have about 30 different organizations across the United States that we've personally mentored. And so there's a list of organizations. So if you're like, okay, I want to support locally, you can go on our website and get to that directory and find the organization close to you. Or you can just go to horseshelternetwork.org and go there directly and check out those organizations. And there is resources on that page for, castration and humane euthanasia assistance.
Okay. You are very busy people.
We're very, very, very busy. Absolutely.
I wonder how many hours a day you put in. A lot. Like, are you working every day?
I do put a lot in. I mean,
yeah.
I work really hard on my work-life balance, and because I know how important it is. You can get burnt out, and then you can't help. Yeah. And we are very, very blessed that we have an amazing team here, and we have a lot of people helping. I think we have close to 30 folks that are here every day, that, help take care of the animals and all these different projects. And especially now that we've gotten into like trying to get people to think about what would happen if, to their legacy, if something happened to them, we also have that program going. Yeah. But just make sure your pets have somewhere safe to be.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything. I have learned so much today, and I've been on your website. I watch your videos, and I've still learned so much today of that I didn't know. And none of us, if we're not in that world, there's no way to know it. And so, and I know that people will care. You can't hear this without caring about it unless you just have no heart at all. So, and I guess that's out there too. So we have to be mindful of, that you kind of have to be aware that people are not always doing the best things for each other or for animals, and to step in, and that's how you change the world, and that's what you're doing. And thank you so much for your time, and especially for what you're doing. Just
thank you.
Blessings to you, and keep on going and stay strong and healthy and fight the good fight.
Well, thank you. And just everyone just do as much good as you can every day, because it will make the world a better place, and you can do your part to change the world.
Good advice. Good advice. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.